Chapter 1. Awoken. Chapter text. Not all men are created equal. Not all men get to live to realize this. Some realize this as they draw their last breath. It all happened after school when they were 4. Bakugo had heard that there was this abandoned building on the outskirts of town from some older kids. Thus he decided that it was obviously a hideout for villains and must be purged by the greatest hero this world has ever seen. However, Bakugo was not an idiot and knew that he couldn't do it alone. So he brought those stupid extras that always hang around, and planned to use a certain runt as bait to lure the villains out. They arrived in front of the decrepit building an hour before sunset. As far as Izuku could tell, he had always been a bright boy after all. "Go on, Deku." Kaken growled, "Go in." Izuku didn't know why he was brought along. Kaken hadn't told him why they were here, but he could feel something inside of him, something telling him to listen, to enter. He pushed the door open and slowly crept in. "Hello?" he called out. "Is there anyone here?" There was nothing but silence in the long-forgotten place. Turning back to look at Kaken, he saw him impatiently tapping his foot, an expectant scowl on his face. Izuku slumped and slowly entered the building fully, the only noise the door creaking closed and his breathing echoing in the dark hall. He continued to walk down the hall, seeing faded posters and streamers scattered around with cobwebs and dust. Finally, Izuku reached a larger room with what appeared to be tables scattered here and there. From what little he could see, it looked like an old pizza joint, like a Peter Piper or Chuck E. Cheese. He continued to slink deeper into the blackness, avoiding looming the tables and benches, when suddenly his foot tapped something. Izuku jumped, head blurring down to look at what he had kicked to see. A bear? It was a little stuffed bear. Its golden fur surprisingly clean for how old it was. It had a little purple hat and bow tie with black buttons running down its chest, a black nose, and blank black eyes. This detail felt odd to Izuku. He felt something odd about the bear. It felt like there was something attached to it, not in the literal sense, but as if something was clinging to it. Izuku reached for the thing in his mind and gave it a small tug. It resisted at first, like a fish on a line, before suddenly rushing to the little doll. Izuku focused on the bear's eyes again. This time they didn't seem so blank, as if something was looking back at him. "What's taking so long, DKU?" Kaken suddenly yelled from the door, nearly causing Izuku to jump out of his skin. "And nothing, Kaken," Izuku replied. "I'm just looking around." Kaken and his lackeys rolled their eyes. "Well, hurry up. We don't have all day." "Why yes, Kaken," Izuku said, head slumping sadly. He wanted to keep exploring the old place. "Give gifts," a voice suddenly echoed. "Give life." "Who said that?" Izuku asked, whipping around, trying to find the source of the voice. When he couldn't see anyone, his gaze returned to the bear doll. "Wake them as you woke me," the voice echoed once more. This time Izuku understood. "Where are they?" Izuku felt a pull. He allowed the pull to guide him to a set of curtains with the words "Pirate Cove" written above them. Izuku pushed the curtains aside, seeing a large slumped-over creature in the middle of the small room. As he got closer, he could make out what it was. A large red fox pirate with tears across its body, exposing wires and metal inside. The fox also had that feeling attached to it. Izuku, assuming that that was what the bear doll had meant, pulled on the feeling. Unlike with the doll, this one did not rush back. Izuku had to pull it all the way to the fox. The fox's eye did not seem to gleam, and it continued to lay slumped and lifeless. Izuku felt disappointed. Did it not work? The others, the bear's voice echoed. "Oh, right," Izuku exclaimed, woken from his sadness. The pull returned, this time to what appeared to be a stage. Izuku climbed up it, albeit with some difficulty, and moved aside the curtain. There he saw 3 more creatures like the fox. A chicken, a bunny, and a brown bear. The chicken was a faded yellow with an orange beak, a bib that said, "Let's eat," and strangely enough it held a plate with a cupcake on it. The cupcake had an orangish-brown wrapper, pink frosting, a birthday candle, and strangest of all, eyes and 2 buck teeth. The bunny was a dark blue, almost purple color. It had a red bow tie and held a red triangular guitar in its hands. Finally, the bear. It held a striking resemblance to the golden bear doll, but it was brown with a black bow tie and hat, and a microphone in its hand. Izuku decided to start with the chicken. He walked in front of it and pulled on that feeling that the fox and doll had. Much like the fox, it needed to be pulled the whole way. The chicken also did not move, but Izuku just moved on to the next creature. He stopped in front of the bear for a brief moment, but felt like he needed to be woken last. So he moved on to the bunny. Similar to the fox and chicken, the feeling needed to be pulled all the way to the bunny. Finally, Izuku moved to the bear. He stood in front of it for a second before reaching for the feeling. Unlike the other large creatures, however, when Izuku pulled on the feeling, it darted into the bear like a shark to its prey. When Izuku looked into the bear's eyes, he saw them looking back at him, gleaming. Shitty DKU. Kaken suddenly roared from right behind Izuku, scaring the poor boy half to death. What have you been doing, you fucking nerd? It's almost dark out. Izuku turned around sheepishly. Nothing, Kaken. I was just exploring. Kaken growled slowly deep in his throat. Deku. His right fist came flying forwards, sparks popping off of it. Suddenly his hand was stopped by something furry. Kaken slowly looked at his hand to see it being held in place by a large, furry, brown hand. Kaken followed the hand up its arm to see the brown bear, standing, looking down at him. Something deep in Kaken knew. It was strong enough to kill him as easily as he could crush an ant under his thumb. And it was angry. Fingers and wings shivered with fear behind him, having come to the same conclusion. Suddenly there was a noise. Sounded like breathing, heavy, labored breathing. Kaken and his lackeys looked over and saw the chicken and bunny staring at them. They were definitely looking forwards before. Above the ragged breathing came a squeaking sound. The boys turned to the sound and saw the fox pulling the curtain back with its hook, its one eye glaring at them as its mouth hung open, exposing large, sharp teeth. The boys did the wise thing. They screamed and ran as fast as they could out the same way they came in. Izuku felt like he should also be running terrified out the door, but for some reason he felt at ease among the looming creatures. You have nothing to fear. The voice echoed in his head, now seeming to come from behind him. Turning around, Izuku could see what seemed to be a larger version of the doll. A golden bear slumped over staring at him with those two alive eyes. We are your friends. We will not let them hurt you. Izuku smiled largely, seeming to brighten up the room. Okay, my name is Izuku. What's yours? I am Fredbear, the voice said, their eyes flashing. Who are you? Izuku asked, turning to the large brown bear that had protected him, lighting up its body with his glowing smile. They cannot speak, child. I will be their voice. Izuku felt a little disheartened at this, but his smile returned full force. Well then, what's their names? Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie. Fredbear replied in its slow, echoing voice. Izuku looked puzzled for a second before studying them all again. He reasoned that Freddy must be the bear's name. Foxy was the fox, of course. Chica must have been the chicken, leaving Bonnie the bunny left over. Well, it's nice to meet all of you, Izuku said, somehow smiling bigger. Although the creatures could not speak, Izuku could feel happiness rolling off of them as they gathered around him. Oh no! Izuku exclaimed suddenly, causing the creatures to flinch back in surprise. What is it, child? Fredbear asked. I have to go home. My mom will be so worried. Izuku cried, hoping that it wasn't dark yet. Do not fret, child, Fredbear soothed. Take the doll with you. I can use it to talk with you and keep you safe. Izuku calmed down a little and nodded. I'll be back to visit you guys tomorrow, he said, smile shining once again to the other creatures. Goodbye for now. Izuku hopped off of the stage and took one look back, seeing the creatures waving at him, feelings of bittersweet happiness flowing off of them. Izuku ran out the door and to his apartment, clutching the Fredbear doll to his chest the whole way. Chapter 2, Alive. Summary. Izuku gets his quirk registered. Izuku arrived home just as the sun sank below the horizon. He opened the door and called out, I'm back, before beginning to take off his shoes. Izuku! A green bullet suddenly slammed into Izuku's side, picking him up off of the ground and hugging him tightly. Mommy! Can't. Breath. Izuku managed to squeak out under the crushing pressure of his mother's arms. Inko released her son, leaning back to look at him, Where have you been, sweetie? I've been worried. Izuku looked down, pulling a strange gold doll closer to his chest. IW was making N new friends. Inko's eyes widened in shock. Well, that's great, sweetie, but you need to make sure you're home at a reasonable time next time. Okay? Okay, Izuku replied. Suddenly his eyes blew wide and he studied the bear doll closer. You mean mommy can meet them too? Inko didn't know how to handle this. Why was her son speaking to the bear? Is this one of his new friends? Before she could ask her son about this, she heard something. A creaking noise accompanied by heavy, jagged breathing. Inko whipped around to see 4 creatures standing in their living room staring at them. Inko screamed before grabbing her son by the hand and dashing out of the front door. Wait, mommy! Izuku cried. Those are my friends. Inko paused. That answers one question but opens up so many more. Slowly Inko crept back inside. Izuku rushed past her to hug the legs of the odd creatures. He excitedly chattered to them about not expecting to see them so soon. Izuku, honey, Inko called out. Can we talk about this for a moment? Izuku stopped talking to the creatures and looked over to her before smiling brightly. Of course. Inko sat in a chair in her living room with Izuku sitting on the couch in front of her. The creatures all standing behind him staring blankly at her. So, honey, can you explain what is going on? Izuku looked confused at first before launching into a rapid rendition of what had happened when he and Katsuki had left school that day. I don't know how they are here though, Izuku finished, looking up at his friends in confusion. Inko could see that these creatures were old, very old. Like so many before her, she wondered where they came from and how they came to be. Suddenly her mind came to a screeching halt. Izuku, sweetie. Izuku looked over at her in confusion. Yes, mommy? Inko grabbed her son and hugged him close, not missing how the creatures jerked forwards as if to protect him. You got your quirk? Izuku was silent for a moment until he suddenly pulled away, vibrating as he ran to the creatures. Did you hear that, you guys? He exclaimed. I got my quirk. What's my quirk, mommy? Inko sighed a laugh before standing up and heading to her purse. Well, your friends, dear. If you woke them up, that must mean that they are a part of your quirk. Izuku started to jump up and down, leaping into the arms of the closest one, Freddy if she remembered correctly, before hugging it tight. Inko was happy for her son, but something about this seemed off. Not right. Especially that one, Fredbear. Unlike the others, something about it seemed more dangerous, more sinister. Inko shrugged it off, nothing to do about it at the moment. Finally, she found her phone after digging through her purse when she heard Izuku say, Oh, you guys are going home? Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. When Inko turned back around, the creatures were gone. No sign of them ever having been there in the first place, minus a small pink cupcake in Izuku's hands, which he promptly ate. Inko decided that now was the time to call the quirk doctor. Izuku was excited to go to the doctor's office so that he could show off his new friends and register his quirk. He kept forgetting about that part. When they arrived at the office, Izuku hopped out of the car and ran inside, sitting in one of the chairs as mommy talked to the lady behind the counter. Do you want to play Fredbear? Izuku asked, looking down at the doll pressed to his chest. If you would like to, child, Fredbear responded. Let's play hide and seek. I'll hide. Izuku nodded with a smile before closing his eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ready or not? Here I come. Izuku leapt off of his seat and began to look around for his friend. He looked under chairs, tables, even some of the toys for the kids. He couldn't find Fredbear anywhere. I will give you a hint, child, Fredbear's voice suddenly rang out. I'm gardening. Izuku stopped for a second, thinking about what Fredbear could mean. Plants! He suddenly cried, checking all of the plants and finding the small doll hiding behind some ferns. Found you, he exclaimed. Izuku, baby, it's time to see the doctor. Mommy called out, watching him closely. Izuku scooped up Fredbear and ran over to grab his mommy's hand. The nurse measured his height and weight before leading them down to a small room with a doctor inside. Hello, my name is Dr. Kimiona, but you can call me Dr. Kim, Kim said, smiling at the boy. Izuku, so buddy, what's your quirk? Izuku smiled brightly before pointing behind her. My friends. Kim was confused before she turned around to see 4 creatures looming behind her. "Oh, how did your friends get in here?" she asked, studying Izuku closely. "Fredbear sent them," Izuku stated proudly, holding out the little golden plushie he had been holding. Kim was very confused by this, but decided to roll with the punches. "Well, how did he do that?" Izuku turned his head in confusion before looking down at Fredbear. "He says that it's his quirk." Kim was taken aback by this statement. The plushie had a quirk? Or was it the boy's quirk that he was assigning to an imaginary friend? "Well, do your other friends have quirks?" Kim asked, putting on a fake smile. Izuku once again looked to Fredbear for the answer. "Well, Fredbear says that Freddy can make himself invincible for a little bit. Foxy can run super fast. Bonnie can make his musk muscles bigger. And Chica makes yummy food that can help you." Izuku's face lit up after he finished, struggling to say some of the larger words. Kim was getting more confused by the minute. First things first, to find out if Fredbear was really alive or if Izuku was just imagining things. "Izuku, why don't we play a game with Fredbear?" Izuku gasped, smile growing brighter like hide and seek. "No, this is how we are going to play. You look away and I will hold up a picture for Fredbear. If he tells you the right picture, then you get a point. Get 5 points and you get a lollipop." Izuku started vibrating in his seat. "Okay." He turned around and set the plushie to face Kim. Kim pulled out her phone and pulled up a picture of a butterfly. "Okay, Fredbear. Tell Izuku what you see." There was a moment of silence before Izuku said, "A butterfly." Kim's stomach dropped. "Gee, good job. 1 point for you guys." Then Kim pulled up a picture of a pineapple. "How about this one?" Again, there was a second of silence before Izuku said, "A pineapple. Yum." Kim's face paled. "T2 points." Next, Kim brought up a picture of a table. More silence before Izuku called out, "Table." 3 points. Kim's hands were sweaty as she pulled up the next photo. "How about this one?" There was barely a beat of silence before Izuku exclaimed, "All might," throwing a fist into the air. "For points," Kim said, looking into the eyes of Fredbear. Eyes that seemed to be staring back. Kim flipped to the next photo. There was a beat of silence before Izuku said in a confused voice, "Fredbear says a foolish doctor who doubts us. What does that mean?" "5 points. You win." Technically, no he didn't. It was a picture of a slice of bread. Kim knew better now though. Fredbear wouldn't like it if she said that was wrong. Izuku turned back around with a huge smile on his face as Kim grabbed a bowl of lollipops, eyes never leaving the plush doll. "Now let's move on to some tests. If that's all right with you, Izuku." Izuku's head nodded so fast that Kim was afraid it would fly off his neck. They started with Bonnie as that seemed the easiest. They had him lift a barbell with increasing weight until they didn't have enough weight to test, ending at 1,000 pounds with no signs of effort at all. Next was Foxy. They had him run around a specially built track and measured that he could reach speeds of over 100 miles per hour. After Foxy, they tested Freddy and found that nothing they hit him with could harm him. While this final test was happening, Kim caught sight of Chica handing Izuku a slice of pizza with her tray, the usual creepy pink cupcake missing. After running their tests, Kim thought it would be a good idea to see what the creatures actually were, and luckily enough one of them just so happened to be ripped. Kim peered inside Foxy and was surprised to see a metal structure and wires. Upon closer inspection of the rest of the creatures, Kim came to a simple conclusion. They were robots. The one odd man out was Fredbear. Kim didn't know how to test him, and as far as she could tell he was just a stuffed bear. "Izuku, your friends are robots. Your quirk must be to bring them to life," Kim explained, "but I'm confused about Fredbear. Isn't he just a stuffed animal?" Izuku was confused for a second before he smiled brightly at her. "Well, this one is, but at the building I found them in there is a bigger Fredbear, so that must be his robot body." Izuku made motions with his hands like a robot. "He told me to bring this version of him with me so that he could protect me." "I see." Kim relaxed. There was nothing to be afraid of. Izuku merely controlled robots with their own quirks, and Fredbears must be to see and communicate through this plushie. "Well, that's it for today. All we have to do is give you Quirk a name. What should it be?" Izuku thought for a moment before exclaiming, "Robot companions." Kim smiled. "A great name. Why don't you go get your mommy while I do the paperwork?" Izuku nodded and ran off to fetch his mother in another room. Kim breathed a sigh of relief. While they may just be robots, Izuku's friends were certainly very creepy in their own right. Speaking of, where did they go? After their visit to the doctor's office, Mommy and Izuku went home and had a big katsudon dinner before Izuku went off to bed, excited about the next day when he could tell all of his friends about his new quirk. As he lay down to sleep, he whispered, "Thank you for being my friend Fredbear." "I love you," Fredbear responded slowly in his echoing voice. "Of course, child. We will always be your friends. And no one will ever harm you." Izuku drifted off to sleep, not seeing the 5 large silhouettes at the foot of his bed, watching him. Chapter 3. Protect. Summary. Izuku goes to school after discovering his quirk. Izuku bounced along the sidewalk holding Mommy's hand and clutching Fredbear close to his chest. "Now remember, Izuku," Mommy said, "no matter how much you want to show off your quirk to your friends, you are not allowed to use quirks in school. You understand?" Izuku nodded, his smile faltering a little. He had been super excited to show his friends his quirk. Finally, they arrived at the school. "Izuku," Mommy said, pulling him into a light hug. "You can go see your friends after school, but make sure to be home before dark." "Okay, Mommy," Izuku exclaimed with a bright smile. With that, Mommy tightened the hug for a moment before walking off to go to work at her law firm. "Shitty Deku," Kaken said, stalking up to him with little explosions popping off of his hands. "Where were you yesterday?" "I was at the Dr. Kaken," Izuku replied with a massive smile, clutching Fredbear tightly. "I got my quirk." Kaken suddenly stopped scowling and grew a large smile. "Well, fucking show me." Izuku looked down sadly. "I can't, Kaken. We're not supposed to use our quirks at school," Kaken scoffed. "I do it all the damn time." "Look." Kaken set off a small explosion and looked at Izuku expectantly. "I can't show you, Kaken, but I can tell you what it is," Izuku exclaimed with a bright smile. Kaken's expression darkened. "Are you fucking lying? I'll only believe you if you show me your damn quirk, Deku." Izuku looked down sadly. "I'm not lying, Kaken. I really did get my quirk. I have robot friends," Kaken scoffed and rolled his eyes. "Really? Then where the hell are they?" Izuku shrunk into himself a little. "At home." Kaken growled. "Shitty Deku, you thought I wouldn't notice you lying. You are a useless piece of shit and you always will be." Kaken stomped off to go play with the other kids, leaving Izuku there alone. Except he wasn't alone. "Do you want me to take care of that boy, child?" Fredbear whispered in Izuku's head. "No, Fredbear. I can't use my quirk at school and you are part of it." Fredbear was quiet for a moment before replying, "As you wish, child." Izuku was a little confused as to what Fredbear meant. Take care of him? What does that mean? Throughout the rest of the day, all of the other kids ignored Izuku, leaving him to sit in the corner with Fredbear. When the bell rang signaling the end of the school day, all of the students rushed to grab their bags, Izuku faster than anybody. Once he grabbed his backpack, Izuku ran down the sidewalk with a massive smile on his face. Fredbear clutched close to his chest. Little did he know that he was being followed. Deku finally arrived at the old building and swung the door open before walking inside. "Everyone, I'm here. Did you guys have a good day?" As Deku entered the building, Fingers and Wings stopped. "Bakugu," Fingers said while trembling. "I don't want to go in there. Those things that we saw are scary." Bakugu scoffed. "Shitty extra. It was just those stupid big kids playing a prank on us. Let's go." Bakugu would never admit it, but he was also scared of the old building. His curiosity to see what the shitty Deku was up to won out, however. Bakugu opened the door as quietly as possible. "Come on, extras. Let's go." Bakugu and his lackeys entered the building quietly, their heads turning to look at their surroundings. Finally, they came across an open door. Confused, they walked inside. They looked around to see that they were in an office of sorts. Across from them was another open door leading to a hallway. A chair sat facing a desk. On the desk there was a lot of trash, balled-up pieces of paper, and an old fast food-style cup with diagonal red and white stripes. The desk also held a very old computer covered in cobwebs, what looked like an old radio with an odd pink cupcake on it, and finally a fan. For some reason this made chills crawl up their spines. On the back wall there were posters and drawings scattered all over the place, including a large worn-out poster. From what they could make out, it had 3 large creatures on it with "Celebrate" written largely at the top. Before they could go exploring anymore, they heard music. It sounded like one of those old music boxes that used to hold jewelry. Slowly the boys turned around to see a glowing face in the hallway behind them, flashing in and out of existence. The face had 2 eyes and an open mouth with large teeth inside. And it was looking right at them. The boys turned tail and ran out the other door, turning and sprinting for the exit as the music kept playing behind them, growing ever fainter as they ran. "Fredbear, where's Freddy?" Izuku asked. Currently he was sitting at one of the tables near the stage having some pizza that Chica found. Made for him, the other robots standing on the stage, warm happiness flowing off of them. But Freddy was missing. Where could he be? "Do not fret, child. Freddy was taking care of some pests that he found," Fredbear replied, his voice echoing from the slumped suit on the stage. "Oh, okay," Izuku said, happily chomping down on the stringy pizza. "The child had a wonderful time with all of us. They showed none of their hidden anger to him. They have no reason to. He is not the cause of it. The others cleaned the restaurant. We must make it suitable for him to spend time in. Gabriel, you did a good job today." Gabriel turns from his chore. He is as silent as always. "I can feel his hatred for those pests. We mustn't kill them, Gabriel. They are not the one we are looking for. Besides, it might make the child upset." Gabriel nodded and continued with his work. "We will find the man that did this to us. We can feel that he is still alive. We will find him, but we will help the child no matter what. He is ours. No one will take him from us." Chapter 4, Threat. Time skip. In some universes, when Izuku's teacher says that he wants to go to UA, kids make fun of him for it. In others, kids acknowledge that Izuku is a shoo-in. In this world, the class remains silent. The students have long since figured out that the creepy kid who talks to a stuffed bear shouldn't be messed with. Years ago, people would make fun of him for bringing a plushie to school, but they always found that something would go wrong for them later that day. One older kid called Izuku a freak, and later that day, he found himself almost falling off of the school building, a backpack in his path where there definitely wasn't one before. Izuku was glad that they didn't make fun of him to his face, even though he knew that they said things when he wasn't around. Izuku didn't have any friends. Well, that wasn't quite true. He of course had his animatronics, but other than them, all of the students thought that he was a demon. Finally, the bell rang out through the silent classroom. Izuku was the first one out of the door, already off to what he now knows is an old Freddy Fazbear pizzeria. Izuku was taking his normal path and discussing the newest hero, Mount Lady, with Fredbear, something he did every day, not including Mount Lady. His path just so happened to lead under a certain bridge. Yeah, so if she has multiple sizes that she can change to, I can see her being very versatile. But if not, then she is going to have to find a way to get around the crowded streets of Japan, Izuku explained, Fredbear poking out of the backpack slung over his shoulder. Perhaps she can shrink herself further than a normal height? Izuku thought for a moment before replying, "It is a possibility, and using her name Mount Lady to misdirect people would be smart. But I don't think that's it." A loud crash erupted from behind them, and Izuku whipped around to see a large puddle of goo rise from a sewer grate, a medium-sized body. Perfect to get away from him. The sludge cried before hurling itself at Izuku and swallowing his body into it. "Now hold still, kid, this will only take a sec." Izuku struggled, clawing at the nasty green sludge forcing its way down his throat. He looked to his backpack that had fallen on the ground for Fredbear, silently pleading for help. "Hold on, child. We will not let him harm you." Freddy and the gang appeared in front of the struggling boy, and he felt tears of relief gush down his cheeks. "What the fuck are these?" the slime thing asked, confused. Abruptly, the animatronic's jaws fell open, and an ear-piercing screech thundered through the tunnel before all 4 of the animatronics reached in and yanked Izuku out of the goopy mass. As Izuku vomited the green slime off to the side with Chica as his guard, the rest of the gang proceeded to tear into the villain's body. Robotic hands scattering chunks of the villain like children tearing apart a large mound of jello. Out of nowhere, a voice rang out, "Haha, you have nothing to fear, for I am here." Izuku's head whipped to the sewer grate to see All Might. All Might stood there, obviously very confused at the situation at hand, the smile not leaving his face, but definitely more twisted in confusion than usual. DDDDDD.WW worry areal M might. MMIF friends WWW were J just PPP protecting me. Izuku managed to stutter out to his favorite hero of all time. All Might turned to look at Izuku and laughed. Haha, thank you for the explanation, my boy. But now they must stand aside, so that I can capture this villain. Izuku nodded so fast All Might was concerned that his head would come off before he yelled, Guys, it's okay. Back off of him. The animatronics stopped ripping into the noticeably smaller slime villain and moved surprisingly quickly to stand in front of Izuku. Meanwhile, Chika handed him a milkshake to help with his stomach. Thank you again, my boy. Now for you, villain. All Might's smile grew larger as he wound up his fist. Detroit MASH. The sludge villain was scattered all over the underpass from the sheer force of the punch. All Might. Izuku exclaimed, Chum? Yes, my boy? What is it? Izuku froze, realizing he just yelled at his idol before Chika suddenly held out his notebook. You want an autograph? Of course. What's your name, my boy? All Might smiled. The sludge villain already placed in 2 empty soda bottles. Midoriya Izuku, sir. Izuku exclaimed, ecstatic at being able to meet his hero in person. All Might quickly signed the back pages of the notebook before grabbing the slime villain's soda bottles. Now I'm sorry, young Midoriya, but I must be OFF. As All Might took a crouching position, Izuku grabbed onto his pant leg. Wait, All Might. I have a very important question for yo. Suddenly Izuku found himself in the air. What are you doing, kid? Get off. All Might exclaimed. If I do that now, I'll die. Izuku cried over the wind's fair point. All Might said, grabbing onto Izuku's backpack to make sure that he didn't fall. They landed on a roof together, and All Might was about to take off again when Izuku asked, Do you think someone who is virtually quirkless can become a hero? All Might turned slightly towards Izuku before a large cloud of steam burst into existence where All Might just was. Out of the smoke, an emancipated man stood with blood dripping from his mouth. Oh no! Izuku cried before looking over his shoulder to his backpack. Fredbear, can you bring Chika? Quickly. The man looked very confused as Chika handed him a slice of pizza. If you eat it, it can heal you, Izuku said, looking dejected. The man raised an eyebrow before taking a bite of the pizza and relaxing a little. Izuku sat on the ground before pulling out Fredbear and hugging the stuffed animal close. Young Midoriya, the stranger suddenly said, squatting in front of Izuku. You don't have to look so sad, Izuku. Not realizing that this person shouldn't know his name, replied with, but All Might left before he answered my question. The man cleared his throat before saying, Actually, young Midoriya, I am All Might. Suddenly there was a burst of steam once again and All Might was there. But you were small and injured. Yes, I am, All Might replied after shrinking down again. I was going to say that someone who is quirkless cannot be a hero. Izuku's heart sank. But I believe you can be a hero. Izuku's head flew up to see the emancipated form of All Might smiling at him. While your quirk may not be able to increase your own strength, the creatures you can summon seem perfectly suited for hero work. You could be the mastermind that tells them how to best use their abilities. Izuku sobbed tears of joy as his hero told him that he can achieve his dream, and for your kindness of worrying over a stranger rather than sulking over possibly not getting an answer. I will reveal to you the secret as to why I am this way. Izuku stopped crying. This was important. About 5 years ago, I got into a fight with a very dangerous villain. I won, but I did not come out unscathed. All Might lifted his shirt and showed off an ugly purple scar that twisted up his chest. That couldn't have been caused by toxic chainsaw? Izuku mumbled, Wow, kid. You really know your stuff. All Might chuckled. Thanks to Chika, was it? Izuku nodded. Thanks to Chika here and this pizza, I feel much better. My hero work is limited to 3 hours a day, and when that runs out I feel awful. But thanks to him Izuku interrupted abruptly. Sorry. It's fine, my boy. Thanks to her I feel great. All Might smiled, laying his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Now I'm sorry, but I have to turn in the villain that attacked you. I hope to see your name on the news in the future as a great hero. Izuku's face was slick with more tears than should be humanly possible. Thank you, All Might. For everything, All Might nodded before opening the door on the building and stepping through. Izuku walked happily down the sidewalk. Meeting his hero had gone much better than he had hoped. Suddenly, a loud noise thundered down the street. Izuku ran towards the noise, thinking it was another hero fight and already theorizing about which hero it could be. When Izuku reached the front of the crowd, his heart sunk in his chest. It was the slime villain. It must have come out of All Might's pocket when they were flying through the air. Then Izuku caught sight of who was in the sludge. Toshinori thought that his day was going pretty well minus having to chase a villain through the sewer. Thanks to young Midoriya and Chika, he felt a million times better. Then he noticed that the soda bottles were gone. Oh shit! He thought before an explosion rang out from down the street. Toshinori ran to see what was happening. Just like he had expected, there was the slime villain, and it had captured another kid. Toshinori's 3 hours were up. He couldn't help. That's when he saw young Midoriya running at the villain and his heart stopped. Fredbear Foxy. As requested, Foxy appeared. Running next to him, grab Kakin. Izuku could feel Foxy's disgust, but Foxy sped forward anyways, grabbing Kakin with his hook and yanking him out of the slime before continuing to run down the alleyway. Fredbear, send Chika to Foxy and Kakin. Bring Freddy and Bonnie here. Freddy and Bonnie fell from the sky to land in crouches on either side of Izuku, their robotic heads panning up to glare at their foe once more. Freddy, help put out the fires. Bonnie, keep the villain distracted. Keep your distance by using your guitar. The two animatronics rushed to follow their orders. Freddy began stomping fires out and Bonnie ran up to the villain and began hacking into it with his guitar. While those two took care of the danger, Izuku ran down the alley past the fight to Foxy, Chika, and Kakin. Fredbear had long ago told Izuku about the time that Kakin snuck inside the restaurant, so Izuku knows the hatred his friends have for Kakin. Seeing young Midoriya act so heroically inspired Toshinori. If only he wasn't over his limit. No, who cares about limits? He is All Might. 1 second Toshinori was at the back of the crowd. The next he was beside the rabbit animatronic in his buff form. Oddly enough, he didn't feel the strain he usually did when he went over his limit, but there was no time for contemplation. Now's the time to fight. Chika, please give him something to help with his stomach. I know you don't like him, but please do it for me, Izuku asked, employing his puppy eyes to convince the female animatronic. Chika released a raspy breath that almost sounded like a sigh of reluctance before handing Kakin a cup of soda. Kakin scowled in distrust, but snatched the soda and drank it anyway. Thank you guys, Izuku said with a large smile, feeling Foxy and Chika's embarrassment. Chika even raised her hand in front of her face as if covering a blush. Now let's get out of here, Izuku said before turning to see All Might join Bonnie in the fight. Toshinori decided that enough was enough. Young Bunny, please step back. I will handle this, from the corner of his eye. Toshinori saw the animatronic nod its head and hop back. Now, this is the end for you, villain. California Seamanash, Toshinori cried, slamming his fist into the top of the slime villain. The wind from his punch blew out the rest of the fires and splattered the sludge all over the walls. Toshinori stood there as the crowd cheered his name, but his attention was focused solely on the boy down the alleyway. The boy and his future. Small time skip. Izuku strode down the street with his animatronics walking with him. He had gotten a lecture from the heroes about proper quirk usage, even if they did compliment him on his quick thinking. Kakin had yelled at him about not needing the help of some stupid villain or something. Izuku didn't really understand because he was still sipping the soda. What could he say? Chika's food and drinks were always really tasty. As the sun set behind the horizon, Izuku could only hope that his mom didn't watch the news and he could play off being late as losing track of time playing with the animatronics again. Suddenly, All Might popped out of a nearby alley yelling, "Hold it right there, young Midoriya. I have something to talk with you about." Izuku jumped back in surprise, landing right in Chika's arms. "Oh, All Might, you scared me. Sorry about that, young Midoriya." All Might laughed before shrinking down. "I just wanted to compliment you on your actions today and offer you something." Izuku turned his head confused. "Offer me something?" All Might nodded. "Yes, young Midoriya. You have proven yourself to be selfless and to possess the hero's spirit." Izuku was crying now, tears streaming down his face as his friends lay a hand on his shoulders. "I would like to give you my quirk." Izuku's tears cut off and the animatronics' heads tilted in confusion. "Your what?" Chapter 5 Start. Summary. All Might starts Izuku on his road to success. Izuku was confused. All Might's quirk? He could give it to someone else? My quirk is called One for All. All Might explained. It stores the energy of the holder and grows larger, accumulating into an ocean of power. Izuku nodded his head, understanding the basics of this universe-shattering quirk. I am the 8th holder of One for All, and I would like for you to be the 9th. Izuku was conflicted. On one hand, All Might just told him the secret of his quirk and that he wants Izuku to have it. On the other, he has his own quirk. Thank you, All Might. This is a great honor. But could you give me a day to think about it? I don't want to make any rash decisions. All Might nodded his head. Of course, my boy. There's no pressure to accept. Meet me tomorrow morning at Dagoba Beach. Even if you don't accept my quirk, I'll still train you to get stronger. Izuku smiled wide, a few tears rolling down his cheeks. Thank you, All Might. I won't let you down. When Izuku got home, Mom grabbed him in a hug and didn't let go for half an hour. Then she scolded him for being so reckless. Apparently, the fight against the sludge villain was on the news. After calming his mom down and apologizing, Izuku slipped away to his room to talk to his animatronic friends. You guys are a large part of my quirk. What do you all think of my taking All Might's quirk as well? Izuku asked his friends as he sat on his bed. Each animatronic grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil/pen. Bonnie was keen to use pens for some reason. Usually Fredbear would speak for them. But Izuku wanted to hear their answers out of their own mouths, or read their answers off of some paper. Foxy was surprisingly done first and handed Izuku his sheet of paper. I think you should take it. It could help you when we are unavailable. Izuku nodded and gave Foxy a hug. Thank you. Izuku felt happiness and content roll off of Foxy as the animatronic hugged him back. Next came Chika. Take it, Zuku. It can make you big and strong. Love. Izuku smiled at the sloppy little heart that Chika had drawn before giving her a hug, as well. Thank you to Chika. I love the heart. Chika gave off a feeling of happiness and slight embarrassment. Next, Bonnie handed Izuku his note. It had several words scribbled out, but Izuku could read it. I think you should take it. It probably won't mess with us too much. Probably. Izuku laughed and gave Bonnie a hug. Thank you, Bonnie. Finally, Freddy stretched out his animatronic hand, holding his piece of paper in it. Izuku, we have watched you grow up, and the one thing we have always wanted was to protect you. Take his quirk, so that we know that you are safe, and so that we can fight side by side to protect others. Tears streamed down Izuku's cheeks as he launched himself into Freddy's arms. Thank you, all of you. The animatronics all gave off feelings of happiness and love. What about you, Fredbear? What do you think? Fredbear was silent a moment before replying, take it. It will make you stronger. We will support you no matter what. Izuku smiled and pumped his fist. All right, I'll do it. Small time skip. Izuku arrived at Dagoba Beach a few minutes early, excited to see All Might and tell him that he will accept his power. Looking over the trash-covered beach, Izuku wondered why All Might had called him to this place. Maybe because of privacy? Young Midoriya. Izuku spun around to see the emancipated form of All Might jogging down the beach towards him. Hi, All Might, Izuku called back. All Might suddenly covered Izuku's mouth. Don't call me that when out in public. Call me Toshinori. Izuku's eyes widened. All Might's real name. So my boy, what did you decide? Remember, I will still train you if you say you won't accept my power. Izuku nodded. I mean Toshinori. I have decided to accept your power. All Might smiled and clapped a hand on Izuku's shoulder. That's the spirit, my boy. Now we have to make you a suitable vessel for my quirk. Wait, Izuku said in distress. I thought you said I was worthy to take your quirk. I meant mentally, young Midoriya. All Might explained. Physically speaking, if you were to take my power now, your arms and legs would be blown off. Izuku gulped and nodded. Then how will we get my body ready? All Might pulled out a large packet. This is called my Aim to Pass, American Dream Plan. With it, we will build muscle mass so that you can harness the power of One for All safely. Izuku took the huge pile of paper and looked inside. Wow, you even have my sleep planned. Yes, it is important to have a consistent sleep schedule of at least 8 hours a night. All Might explained. Now, let's get started. Time to clean some trash. Izuku and All Might headed down to the trash-ridden beach, and All Might began teaching Izuku how to properly lift things and what size of items they would be starting on. Meanwhile, they never noticed a figure hiding behind a pile of trash spying on them. I do not approve of the child receiving this power. The others think that it will make him stronger. I think that it will bring nothing but bad luck. I am afraid that he will be consumed by it. I am afraid that we will be consumed by it. I can feel how powerful it is. It is dangerous. I will support the child, however. That is my duty. You should never have given that man food. He will only lead the child to his demise. Susie remained motionless. I could feel that she disagreed. I do not care. I will save the child. I will save him even if it means he hates me. I will save him even if it means killing all who stand in my way. Chapter 6, New. Summary. Izuku finds out who was watching him clean Dagobah. 1 month later. Izuku had been practicing All Might's training regime ever since he had gotten it. In the early morning, he would jog to Dagobah Beach with Fredbear in his backpack, carry trash up to the animatronics who would take them to the dump, job back home, take a shower, go to school, job to the old restaurant which had become his own personal gym thanks to the weights All Might had supplied him with, say goodbye to his friends for the day, jog home, take another shower, eat dinner, do his homework, and go to sleep. It was a very repetitive process. The only differing parts tended to be the types of garbage he hauled and what he was learning in school that day. He already knew everything about what the teachers were teaching them and could very well just test out of his last year of middle school. But Mom wanted him to interact with kids his own age. He had never told her that the kids all ignored him. But it didn't matter. He used that time for writing in his hero notebook and studying for the UA entrance exam. One day when Izuku was working at Dagobah just as the sun was rising, he heard a massive crash come from one of the piles of trash before a cloaked figure fell to the sandy floor with an odd contraption under their arm. Finally, I caught you red-handed. The figure exclaimed in a voice that had obviously passed through a voice modifier before setting down the contraption and yelling, "Blastinator, destroy the intruder." The contraption whirred to life before spouting, "Commencing eradication," in a cute voice. The contraption suddenly grew a large gun from the top of its head. Is that what it is? The gun fired at a shocked Izuku before he could truly get a grasp on what was going on. Thankfully, it missed by a mile and merely caused some sand to kick up. Note to self. Recalibrate Blastinator's aim, the figure commented before Blastinator fired another shot. This one, however, was blocked by Freddy, standing in front of a bewildered Izuku. Foxy appeared behind the hooded figure and lifted them off of the ground with his hook. Bonnie was about to ask the robot its last question when Chica had a thought along the lines of, "What does this button do?" before pressing a small button on the side of the robot. The small robot then self-destructed in a small ball of flame. "I knew I shouldn't have included the self-destruct button," the figure said in an obviously pouty tone as Foxy held them up by their pants in front of Izuku. "Who are you and why did you attack me?" Izuku asked with a frown. "I am the greatest inventor to ever live, mwahahaha," the figure replied, cackling madly before snapping. "And I attacked you because you keep stealing my free parts, furry lord." "What?" Izuku asked, his brain not comprehending the situation at hand. "Sigh," the figure said. "Did they say the word sigh?" Before they lowered their hood to reveal pink, a lot of curly pink hair and yellow eyes. "You keep stealing my free parts, furry lord. Stop it." Izuku was confused at the odd girl in front of him. "Furry lord." The girl removed a device from around her neck and sighed once more. "Yeah, you built a bunch of furry robots. Thus you are the furry lord. Now stop stealing my parts." Izuku was taken aback for a second before he replied. 1. I'm not stealing anything. I'm picking up the trash. 2. I am not the creator of my friends. They are a part of my quirk. And 3. Please stop calling me furry lord. My name's Izuku. The girl rolled her eyes and said, "Whatever, furry lord dash. Stop calling me that. Just stop taking the parts, okay? I need them for my inventions." "You mean like the robot that you commanded to kill me?" Izuku asked incredulously. "Yes. Exactly," the girl responded with a large smile. "Sorry. No can do," Izuku said. "I'm using this to get stronger." "Why not just lift weights like a normal person?" the girl asked with an annoyed look on her face. "Because I'm going to be a hero, and community service is what heroes do," Izuku said with a scowl. "You want to be a hero?" the girl asked. stroking her chin in thought. Yeah, what of it? Izuku asked warily. Then I'll be your inventor furry lord. Dash. I told you to stop calling me that. I can make you all sorts of things if you just bring me the parts instead of doing whatever you do with them. Izuku thought for a second. That could be useful. Plus, if he could help out someone else while getting rid of the trash, then it was a win-win. You've got yourself a deal, he said, offering a hand to the girl. What's your name? The girl grabbed his hand and gave it a firm shake. Handsome May. Now come on, furry lord. Let's get to work. From that day forward, May would come to the beach every other day and tell Izuku what to bring to her ultra super mega awesome lab/workshop/living quarters, which just turned out to be her parents' garage. It was nice to finally have someone to talk to that wasn't his mother, an old robot, or the #1 pro hero. Don't get him wrong. He loved talking to them. Scout's honor. He was never a scout. But having someone his age to talk to was nice. The next day Toshinori was walking up to the beach when he heard yelling. So he ran to see what was going on. There he found young Midoriya struggling to move a medium-sized TV while being yelled at by a very excited Pinkette. He slowed from a run to a jog and made his way down to the duo, seeing young Bonnie standing with his arms crossed and staring at the two in what seemed to be bemusement. Who is that with young Midoriya? Young Bonnie? Toshinori asked the machine before realizing. Right? You can't answer me. Young Bonnie gave an eye roll and pointed to young Midoriya. I should go talk to him, shouldn't I? Thanks, young Bonnie. Young Bonnie wheezed a breath that sounded suspiciously like a sigh of exasperation as Toshinori jogged over to the two children. Young Midoriya, who is this? Toshinori asked, eyeing the Pinkette with a little suspicion. Oh, all me dash. I mean sensei. Young Midoriya stuttered. Nice save, my boy. This is Dash. Hastum May at your service, Skeelman, said the Pinkette, young Hatsum. I am Furry Lord's master and inventor. Young Midoriya looked flabbergasted as Toshinori chuckled. I see. Well, it's good to have you here, young Hatsum. My name is Toshinori Yagi, and I am training young Midoriya here to be a hero. Young Midoriya beamed at Toshinori before young Hatsum replied, pointing at young Midoriya. Nice to meet you, I guess. Now, back to work, my Furry Lord minion. I told you, Tio, stop calling me that, was what some passers-by heard as they commuted to work. What could that poor little girl have been called? Small time skip. One day while Izuku and his animatronics were bringing May the parts she had requested, they saw a police vehicle in front of her house. Worried, Izuku picked up the pace, seeing a police officer standing in front of the garage's door. Did something happen, officer? Izuku panicked. The officer turned around and huffed, a crocodile tail smacking the ground behind him. I'm guessing you're a friend, Omaze? Nothing bad happened that I'm aware of, just another noise complaint. With this, the officer knocked on the door to the garage and yelled, May, open up. The door slid open and May emerged covered in oil and... Was that soot? What is it now? She asked, annoyed. This is the last warning I can give you, girlie, the officer replied. I know that you're going to be a great inventor someday, but for now you need to keep it down, especially at night, okay? The neighbors are getting all uppity again. May nodded solemnly and said, I understand, officer, thank you. The officer looked sad, but nodded and left. Have a good day, May. Izuku watched the tailed officer leave and walked into the garage. May was sitting on a stool with her head resting face down on a scorched and cluttered table. Izuku waited there for a second, contemplating before he set the parts down on the table and rested a hand on May's shoulder. You know, May, I think I have a place that you could use as a workshop and not get any complaints. May's head shot up and she looked at Izuku with wide eyes, their noses almost touching. Where? Izuku scratched the back of his head awkwardly before simply saying, Come with me. The two exited the garage, shutting it behind them. Soon they arrived at an old pizza place, and even though May was hesitant at first, seeing Furry Lord walk in with a large smile on his face calmed her fears. When they reached the main room, May could see that this was a place Izuku visited a lot. On one side there were various types of weights like a bench press, some dumbbells, and a squat rack. On the other side there was a couch, TV, table, and blankets strewn about. Sorry for the mess. Besides me, only the animatronics come here, Furry Lord said, rubbing the back of his head before perking up. Oh, come with me. Furry Lord led May through a door that said employees only to another room. Inside this room there were shelves on the walls and a table sitting in the middle. So, Furry Lord said nervously, what do you think? May sat there for a second, stunned. All of this, just for her. Tears pricked her eyes a little. Thank you, Fur. Izuku, it's perfect. Izuku grinned wide, brightening the whole room and making May take in a breathe. Of course, May. What are friends for? May smiled back, a tear rolling down her cheek. Yeah. May arrived home that night, the smile having not left her face since leaving the old pizza joint. She walked up the steps to the front door before she noticed it. There were cars in the driveway. Her family was home. No big deal. She can handle this. No, she can't. She opened the door quietly, shutting and locking it behind her as stealthily as possible before tiptoeing towards the door to the garage. May, an angry voice stopped her. Come in here, please, damn it. May's head hung. They had caught her. She trudged into the living room where her family all sat around. May, her father said, we got another noise complaint today. May flinched a little and nodded, not daring to say a word. We have indulged you in trying to follow our footsteps and become an inventor, but you should find something else to do, her mother continued. Maybe take up a position at a lighthouse or something. Your Quirk would be really handy there. This was something May had heard before. Unlike her parents or her siblings, her Quirk wasn't really applicable to inventing. Her younger sister was able to draw perfect blueprints of anything she can imagine if she understands the mechanisms behind it. Her younger brother was able to know how to use any tool he picked up flawlessly. Her father was able to create tools from raw materials if he knew the components of it, and her mother was able to write code flawlessly and quicker than anyone else on the planet, something May had been proud of when she was younger. Her Quirk, however, it was useless. Everyone had told her in school. The reason she didn't go. Her family and counselors tried to convince her to choose a different career path. The reason she doesn't talk to either if given the chance. And even though her parents had allowed her to use the garage to make her inventions, they also made her sleep there so as to not disturb the rest of the house. She had to build an AC unit from scratch to help with the lack of insulation in the garage. We will be having dinner in an hour. Would you like to join us for once, or just have your cup ramen in your workshop instead? Her sister asked, sneered. May mumbled off an answer before quickly slinking into the garage where she let off a huge sigh. She made herself her dinner, cheap cup ramen that her parents give her so that she doesn't starve, and climbed into bed, a couch that she found at Dagoba. Later that night, May woke up in a cold sweat. She had just had a nightmare. They were common. As she lay there looking at the ceiling, she finally realized something. Izuku had given her a workshop and whatever else she might need. She should thank him. Suddenly a thought popped into her head in an oddly painful manner. It was as if it had been forced into her head. Blueprints. She shot off of the old couch and to her design table and began sketching. It was perfect. She would build this to give to Izuku as thanks for giving her a place to work. A new home. As May drew on the paper, making sure not to mess up the intricate design, she did not notice the being watching her. From its position close to the garage door, it watched her with glowing eyes as she worked. It felt satisfaction that she would make this for Izuku, even if it did not trust her to be his friend. That was the animatronic's job after all. Chapter 7. Friend. Summary. Izuku's a good friend and makes sure that May is taking care of hers. 6 months until the entrance exam. May had finished one part of the gift for Izuku. It had taken her nearly 2 months to get it ready, but being at the Freddy Fazbear Pizza place was a huge step up from her parents' garage. She could work whenever she wanted for however long she wanted, as loud as she wanted, without anyone ever telling her off. Plus, she had more materials now than she knew what to do with, and she had help in the form of the animatronics. Chica would regularly bring her food and spend time with her. Freddy would stop by often as well to watch her with fascination and hand her various materials and tools. Foxy would come by once in a while and see what she was doing. Only Bonnie seemed to not want to be around her, and there was that odd suit that she barely ever saw, but she didn't care much for it. Izuku was also constantly coming over and helping her with items she was working on, not the gifts. One day, night, time is hard when you're inventing. Izuku came into her workshop and said, May, we need to talk. May didn't look up from her work. having flawlessly switched projects without Izuku noticing. What about Izuku? You are spending way too much time inventing. Mei's heart sank. No. Please not him too. Of course him. You're not getting enough sleep. You need to take regular breaks to sleep and eat. Huh? Huh? Mei's head whipped from her work to see Izuku standing in the doorway with a concerned look on his face. It's not healthy to work for this long. Chika told me that you haven't slept in 2 days. Whatever you're working on can wait until tomorrow morning. But Izuku scowled, not buts. The only but is yours out in the main room asleep. Got that? Izuku put his hands on his hips and frowned at Mei. Mei's heart fluttered a little and a small blush graced her cheeks before she looked down and replied, okay. Izuku nodded once and led her out into the main room where she saw Chika coming out of the kitchen with 2 steaming bowls and Freddy placing a pillow and fluffy blanket on the couch. Izuku went and sat down at the coffee table in front of the couch and thanked Chika when she handed him one of the steaming bowls. Chika looked over at Mei and put her hands on her hips, not very unlike Izuku, and pointed to the couch. Mei sat down and Chika placed the steaming bowl in front of her. Curry? Mei looked to Chika in confusion, only to find her trotting back into the kitchen. Mei sat there for a second, unsure of what to do. Eat, Izuku ordered. Mei started a bit before taking a bite. It was delicious. Mei scarfed it down and looked up to Izuku, who had also just finished. Lay down, he said in a stern tone. After Mei had lain down, Izuku came over and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Now sleep, Izuku ordered before walking off to exercise. Mei nodded, her eyes drooping heavily as she sank into a deep sleep. When Mei woke up, she saw Izuku and Foxy fiddling with a TV on a table on the other side of the coffee table. Mzukoku, Mei said, stretching beneath the blanket. What you're up to? Mei asked sleepily. Izuku turned around quickly. Oh, you're finally awake. Well, Foxy and I are setting up a TV with a Blu-ray player. I was thinking that to make sure that you sleep, we could have movie night every other night. If not, that's okay. I just thought it might be Dash. It's a great idea, Izuku, Mei said with a small smile. So, what's the first movie? With a smile, Izuku began to list off some movies. Later that night, Suzy looked down and smiled. Mei and Izuku had fallen asleep together and were leaning against each other on the couch. She grabbed a blanket and tucked the two in together before heading with the rest of her friends up to the stage. She waved goodnight to Fritz, who waved back, heading to Pirate Cove. As Suzy, Gabriel, and Jeremy took their spots on the stage, Suzy looked at the sleeping children and smiled again. She couldn't wait to see what great people they became. Chapter 8. Exam. Summary. UA Entrance Exam. Morning of the exam. Toshinori pulled his truck up to Dagoba, which was looking much cleaner nowadays. Young Midoriya had been working really hard to become a suitable vessel for One for All, and Toshinori thought that he was ready to accept his quirk finally. Toshinori got out of his truck and walked up to the beach, where he saw one last large pile of trash stacked up by the curb. On top of the pile stood young Midoriya screaming into the morning air. Quickly checking to make sure young Hatsum wasn't around, Toshinori buffed up to his hero form and yelled, "Oh my goodness!" Young Midoriya wobbled before falling off of the pile. Toshinori caught him before he could hit the ground. He set the sweat-covered young man on his feet and planted both of his large hands on his shoulders. "Good job, young Midoriya. You've completed the task just in time." Young Midoriya smiled and bowed. "I couldn't have done it without you, All Might." Toshinori felt his heart warm from the sight and boomed a laugh. "Now, young Midoriya, it's time." Toshinori saw the animatronics gather around, Freddy holding onto the ever-present Fredbear. Young Midoriya looked up and smiled. "I'm ready, All Might." Toshinori plucked a strand of hair from his head and said, "You have come a long way, young Midoriya. You have earned this with your blood, sweat, and tears. Now, eat this." Toshinori held out the strand of hair to young Midoriya, who froze up in shock along with his animatronics. "Do what?" Toshinori sighed. "To pass on One for All, you must consume some of my DNA." This seemed to be the least gross option. "Don't worry, I washed." Toshinori's smile was forced, and he had a feeling that they could all tell. Young Midoriya took the hair and swallowed it before shuddering. "Gross." Toshinori deflated. "Now, young Midoriya, One for All might still have a negative effect on your body, so be careful when you use it, all right?" Young Midoriya nodded with a serious expression. I won't use it in the exam. That way we can practice it together in a safer environment. Sounds like a plan, young Midoriya, Toshinori said. Now get a move on. Don't want to be late. Young Midoriya nodded before turning to his animatronics and saying, Come on guys. Let's head home to get ready. As Toshinori watched them walk off, he wondered if his master would be proud of him. He sure hoped so. Outside of UA, Izuku stood in front of the gates to UA, wondering if he was ready to take this test. You will do fine, child. Let us enter and show them what we are made of, Fredbear said from his position in Izuku's backpack. Izuku nodded and was about to walk forward when someone bumped his shoulder. An impressive feat considering the 4 giant robots directly behind him. Leave, Deku. You have no place here, Kakin growled as he passed by. Izuku looked at the ground sadly. Maybe he's right. Chika placed her hand on his shoulder and shook her head before giving him a light push forward. Thanks, Chika, Izuku said. Feeling love coming from his friends. Let's do this, Izuku said before taking a step and immediately tripping over a rock. Or I guess I'll just die. Suddenly Izuku stopped in mid-air. I'm sorry. I used my quirk on you without permission. I'm so sorry. Suddenly Izuku found himself right side up again and staring at a cute girl with a bob cut and rosy cheeks. I just thought it would be bad if you tripped and fell right before the test. Anyway, good luck, the girl said before running off towards the building. I talked to a girl, Izuku said, trying to impersonate a tomato. No, you did not. Besides, you talk to a girl most every day. Izuku was confused for a second. Who was Fredbear talking about? Wait, he means Hatsum, right? Hatsum. Izuku shakes his head before putting on a look of determination. Let's do this. Time skip. As Izuku sat down in the lecture hall, he pondered how he did on the written test. Seemed pretty easy, but some people were struggling on it. Did he perhaps not fully understand the questions? Oh well, something to worry about later. Can I get a yeah? President Mike yelled as he popped up on stage. No one responded. Tough crowd, President Mike said dejectedly before beginning to explain the rules. Izuku clutched Fredbear to his chest. He was worried about how he would fare in the practical exam when out of nowhere a boy with blue hair and glasses stood up and interrupted President Mike. Sir, he yelled, moving his arm up and down like a robot. You said there were 3 robots that gave points, but in the pamphlet it clearly states that there are 4. Also you 4. He pointed at the animatronics. Find your seats. This is disrespectful to the school. Izuku got a little angry at that. They are a part of my quirk, not students. Also you are being disrespectful by interrupting President Mike and yelling at my friends. The blue-haired boy paled before bowing to President Mike. My apologies, sir. President Mike just laughed. It's alright, examinee 285692. You are correct that there is a 4th robot, but he's not worth any points, so it's useless to mention him. Izuku sat down, now embarrassed for his outburst. Finally, President Mike released the hero hopefuls to find their bus and get to their testing site. Getting on and off of the bus was an ordeal to say the least. Turns out fitting 4 8-foot-tall animatronics into a bus is not as easy as it sounds. When they arrived at the testing site, the students all spread out and did their own things, some stretching, others talking, and so on and so forth. Izuku saw the girl who had kept him from face-planting earlier and was about to go thank her when he was stopped by the blue-haired boy. I'm sorry for calling you and your friends out earlier, the boy said while bowing. It's not a big deal, Izuku replied. Just learn from the mistake and stop jumping to conclusions. The boy nodded and stood up straight. Start. President Mike suddenly boomed. Foxy. Go to the back of the site and take out robots there, Izuku exclaimed. Chika. Bonnie. Freddy. You guys are with me for now. Foxy took off into the site as President Mike told the other hopefuls that the exam had started. Izuku ignored the other test takers and ran into the testing site, quickly finding a 1-point robot. Bonnie. Take out the robots we meet. Freddy, back him up, but stay close to Chika and me in case anything happens. Chika, if you could give me something that increases strength and stamina, I would appreciate it. Bonnie and Freddy ran forward as Chika pulled out a cup of cola and handed it to Izuku. Freddy stood in front of Chika and Izuku while Bonnie ran out to meet the robot, carrying his guitar low to the ground next to his legs. As the robot swung its fist to hit Bonnie, the rabbit robot ducked and swung his guitar up diagonally, cutting the 1-pointer in half. Izuku finished off the delicious cola and threw it away in a nearby trash can. Come on guys. Let's get in deeper. The 3 animatronics and their master started running farther into the small city. They managed to rack up 13 points before they saw another person. It was a blonde boy with a large belt hugging his waist as a three-pointer charged at him. "Bonnie, throw Freddy at the robot," Izuku yelled. Bonnie grabbed Freddy's outstretched arm and chucked him at the other robot. Freddy slammed into the other robot, crushing it against a wall. "Chica, you give him something to help with his stomach ache and meet up with us later. Help anyone you see that needs healing." "Bonnie. Freddy, let's go." Chica jogged over to the boy and offered him a milkshake while Izuku and Ko continued running. Along the way they racked up another 9 points before Izuku saw a boy with spiky red hair helping up a pink girl with horns. Looking up, he saw a part of the building they were next to start to fall. "Freddy, go protect them." Freddy blurred over to the two kids before hugging them tightly. The piece of wall fell on them, but shattered on Freddy's back. "Bonnie, go beat some more robots. I'll help Freddy." Bonnie nodded and took off down the sidewalk as Izuku ran over to where Freddy was protecting the other testers. Izuku helped Freddy dig them out of the rubble before he took off after Bonnie, telling Freddy to make sure that they stayed safe. Eventually Izuku found Bonnie, who Fredbear told him had gotten 16 more points. Suddenly the testing area started shaking. Izuku looked around and saw the other testers running away. When he turned around he saw why. Looming over the city was the zero-pointer. Foxy, Chica, and Freddy all arrived to stand next to Izuku when they heard a pained cry. Izuku saw the helpful girl from earlier pinned under a piece of rubble as the zero-pointer beared down on her. His body was running before he knew it. "Foxy, take Chica and Freddy and go help the girl. Bonnie, come with me." They split up. Izuku and Bonnie ran at the zero-pointer while Foxy grabbed Chica and Freddy and ran over to the girl. Izuku felt something deep in him start to burn. 2 red marks appeared on his cheeks as tears cascaded from his eyes and black sparks popped off of his body. Izuku heard strange cracking noises and looked over at Bonnie. Bonnie had grown to a staggering 10 feet tall. Everything about him was larger and there were tears all over his body showing the endoskeleton beneath. Izuku didn't have time to ponder the changes. An idea popped into his head. "Bonnie, throw me at the zero-pointer." Bonnie's now glowing purple eyes looked over at him before he sprinted out in front of Izuku and held his guitar flat near the ground. Izuku jumped onto the guitar before Bonnie yanked it up. Izuku flew through the air before turning, so that his feet were angled at the zero-pointer. "Montanea SMASHHHHH." Izuku cried, slamming his feet directly into the zero-pointer's head. The zero-pointer's head collapsed in on itself as it stumbled back and fell, exploding on the way down. Izuku's entire body hurt as he fell, probably backlash from using too much of what could only be one for all. As Izuku fell, he pondered what his mom and animatronics would do after he died. Would the animatronics die as well? He hoped not. Before he could fall into a deeper depression about his impending doom, he hit something soft and looked down. There he saw a large pile of tiny Freddys? The Freddys gently lowered him to the ground where he saw the other animatronics had changed as well. They all had the same look of disrepair that Bonnie had, but with odd differences from how they usually looked. Freddy now had mini Freddys growing out of him and walking around doing various tasks. Foxy and various places where there was no suit or endoskeleton and had glowing orange eyes. Chica's bib was torn up and her cupcake had sharp teeth and a scowl. Izuku was very confused by all of this, but his exhaustion caught up to him and he watched the animatronics revert to their usual form as he lost consciousness. Shako was very confused. The boy she had stopped from face-planting earlier had fainted and left her alone with his shape-shifting pals. Thankfully, she wasn't afraid of them despite their previous transformations. The chicken robot handed her a slice of pizza that made her queasy stomach growl. She took a bite and immediately felt better. Her stomach calmed and her foot was in much less pain. "Is anyone hurt over here?" a little old lady called as she walked over to Ochako and the others. Swallowing the last of the pizza, she called out, This boy passed out and I hurt my foot." The little old lady walked over and said, "Dear me, did he do that?" She pointed at the large fallen robot. Ochako nodded before the lady placed a kiss on her forehead. "That should take care of your foot. Take some gummies and you can head out now. I'll take care of Mini Might over here," she said with a wink. Ochako laughed and thanked her before walking off. She hoped that boy got in, he was nice. Chapter 9. Greetings. Summary. After the entrance exam. Izuku woke up to the smell of antiseptics and bright white lights. As he sat up, he felt like his legs were burning. "So you're finally awake, huh?" Izuku's head swiveled to see a short old lady with a cane shaped like a syringe sitting on a chair across the room. "You're the youthful heroine. Recovery girl," Izuku cried, his eyes shining with excitement. Recovery girl merely huffed and leapt down from her chair to hobble over to the young man. Crack! She whacked him on the head with her cane, yelling, "That's what you get for cracking every bone in your legs." Before she could continue, a large furry hand grabbed the end of the cane and ripped it from her hands. "It's okay, Freddy. I do kinda deserve it." Izuku could feel that Freddy disagreed, but he handed back Recovery Girl's cane anyway. "I'm sorry, Recovery Girl, but that part of my quirk was entirely new, so I didn't dash. I know you have one for all. Who do you think healed the big blonde bozo when he got that injury?" Recovery Girl scowled. "But I understand that that was your first time using the quirk, so it makes sense that you got a little hurt." Recovery Girl obviously wasn't happy, but handed him a pack of gummies, telling him that he can leave whenever he feels that he can make it home safely. After Recovery Girl left, Izuku looked over at his little group. The animatronic stared back at him before Chika ripped the gummies out of his hand and handed him a candy bar. Izuku chuckled a little, feeling the slight jealousy that Chika felt about not being the one to heal Izuku. As Izuku munched on the Freddy Fudge bar, he thought back to the exam. After he swallowed the last bite, he turned to Fredbear and asked, "Why did the gang all change during the exam?" "The hero's power caused it. When it activated in you, some of the power flowed to them. I believe that it was to keep you from being severely injured, child," Fredbear replied. Izuku nodded before a smile grew on his face. "I can't wait to test it out. We'll have to go to the beach and test out the effects while I wait for the letter." Izuku was glad that he had something to keep him busy while he waited. Izuku and the gang left the nurse's office with Izuku riding on Foxy's back and Fredbear on his back. He was feeling lazy and someone drew cute fan art of it. Sue him. Eventually the gang reached the pizzeria and walked inside. There they found a tired, but excited M. Hatsum. "Hey me Hatsum, what are you up to?" Izuku asked innocently. Hatsum raised an eyebrow in confusion, but brushed it off, a wide smile growing on her face. "I have a surprise for you. Come on." Izuku slid off of Foxy's back, and the gang walked over to Hatsum's work area. As they entered the workshop, Izuku caught sight of a few inventions, but the ones that caught his eye the most were 4 odd boxes on the work table. Hatsum proudly bounced over to the table and threw her arms out with a "Hey, these are thank you gifts for letting me use this place as a workshop." She saw Izuku's confused look and decided a demonstration was best. "Chika, could I have some help from my wonderful minion?" Izuku could feel the slight chuckle that rumbled inside Chika as she walked over to stand next to Hatsum. Hatsum pressed a small hidden button on Chika's chest, and her chest burst open with a hiss, exposing the wires inside. Hatsum picked up one of the boxes and slowly fit it into a spot inside Chika's chest. When it was closed, Hatsum smiled and said, "Go on, test it out." Izuku could feel Chika's apprehension as she took a step away from Hatsum. Her mouth opened, "Hello Zuzu." Izuku froze. Tears cascaded down his face in large drops. "You won't get tired of my voice, will you?" Chika said, worry and fear evident in her voice. Izuku lunged forward and wrapped the large robot in a hug, his body shaking with happiness. "Never. I'll never get tired of your voice." Izuku felt the fear and worry melt away to be replaced by happiness and love. "I've always wanted to talk to you, Zuzu, and now we can." At that, Izuku's head popped up, and he whipped around to see Hatsum fitting the last voice box into Freddy's chest before pressing his nose, it making a "bew" sound. Izuku's tears started again, and he ran and picked up Hatsum in a tight hug from behind. "Thank you so much, Mihatuzum. This means so much to us." Hatsum stiffened before saying, Why? Why do you keep doing that?" Izuku set her down, but didn't release her from the hug. "What?" Hatsum trembled. "Why do you keep calling me by my family name and not my real name?" Izuku released her and looked down. "WL. I had just started calling you your name since we met, and I just felt that that was rude and I should have asked first." Hatsum's hands clenched into fists. "You idiot!" Izuku's heart sank. He just lost his first friend in years, You're my best friend. Of course I want you to call me by my name. Izuku's head snapped up to see Hatsume crying, tears dripping off of her chin. You are my only friend, Izuku. Izuku's eyes watered, and he lunged forward, grabbing Mei in a hug and holding her tight. You're my best friend too, Mei. He felt the girl sob into his shoulder and hug him back. Her nails dug into his shirt, but he didn't care. They sat there for a bit before they heard a harumph. And what about us, Zuzu? Izuku and Mei looked over to see the gang standing there looking at them. Chika was really the only one to seem mad. Foxy and Freddy just looked amused by the events, while Bonnie looked off aloofly. Izuku giggled a little before he smiled blindingly. You guys are not my friends. You're my family. Chika's angry posture melted. Foxy and Freddy stopped chuckling, and even Bonnie peered over, uncrossing his arms. Group hug, Chika shouted, picking up the two young adults and pressing them to her, thankfully soft, chest. The others joined in, even if one had to be pulled over by the other animatronics. Now, I want to hear what the rest of you sound like, Izuku said, eyes sparkling. Foxy let out a chuckle before saying, Thank you, Mei. Your babies mean a lot to use. Yar, Izuku giggled at the odd speech pattern. Whatever. It's not like Fredbear wouldn't have just said what we wanted to tell him anyway, Bonnie said with a huff. Izuku chuckled before looking expectantly at Freddy. Freddy pulled away from the hug and looked down at Izuku. His mouth opened and he ran out of the room. Wait, what? Izuku chuckled before chasing after him, yelling, Get back here! Mei and Chika were hot on his trail. Shall we join them to chase after the yellow belly? Your Foxy asked, slapping his hand down on Bonnie's shoulder. Bonnie rolled his eyes and said, No, they'll catch him eventually. Let's just wait on the couch or whatever. Small time skip. It was Mei who ended up catching Freddy, having had Chika throw her at him. Izuku then threw himself on the large bear, yelling, Dog pile. Freddy chuckled and said, You caught me, Zuku. Izuku's eyes watered, and he cried again, hugging his best friend and animatronic tightly. That night they had movie night after not having it for a while to prepare for the exam. Mei looked around, seeing the animatronics asleep around the couch. Izuku leaned onto her shoulder, also asleep after the long day. Mei blushed, remembering what she said earlier. When did he get so strong? Felt nice to be picked up. Maybe he can pick me up while Mei slapped her cheeks. No bad thoughts like that tonight, although she did think it was impressive that he picked her up. With a smile, she hugged Izuku and allowed herself to drift off to sleep. I still do not care for the power of the hero. It was too powerful for the child. They had to take parts of it away from him so that he was not injured. I will not let him be injured. I will consume the power if I must. The girl. I gave her the plans for the voice boxes. Maybe I should not have. Now it is impossible to filter the information given to the child. At least the child is happy. That is what matters most. I will protect the girl. Only because she brings the child joy. They will sleep. I will remain awake and watch over them, just like I have for 300 years. I will not sleep until I have found him. I am coming for you, Afton. Chapter 10. Results. Summary. Izuku and the gang test their new powers and get the results from the exam. The next day saw Izuku out at Dagoba with the animatronics. Now that he wasn't destroying giant robots, healing, or thanking his best friend for her inventions, he had time to remember the odd forms that the animatronics took. Fredbear had told him that One for All was the source of this new transformation, but that didn't mean that they didn't have to test out these new powers. But how do they transform? Do I have to use One for All, or can they do it by themselves? I know that Freddy got a new power, but did the rest of them? Those mini Freddys could be really handy. Mini Freddys? Lil Freddys? Freddles? Whatever, do they have the same defensive capabilities as Freddy? Do the others have Freddles too? Boneless. No, that doesn't sound right. How about mumble mumble mumble? Izuku rambled to himself while pacing in front of the animatronics. Freddy chuckled, a deep rumble in his chest. Foxy was cackling and holding his gut while Chika was giggling behind her hand. Finally, Bonnie sighed and smacked Izuku upside the head lightly. You're mumbling too much. Why don't we just try out our new powers or whatever? Izuku nodded. Why don't you guys try activating your transformations without me using One for All? The animatronics stopped their various laughter and closed their eyes in concentration. Suddenly black spars shot off of their bodies for a second before they began to change. Izuku watched closely as they all got much larger, seeing them appear to age quite a bit before they reached their full transformations. Awesome, Izuku said with a very large grin. Now let's see if you guys have new powers like Freddy. Freddy started popping off frettles as he walked to stand next to Izuku and look at his fellow robots. Foxy's voice echoed slightly as he said, I feel something odd happening here out of nowhere. Foxy seemed to shrink and fold in on himself until he turned into what seemed like a plushy version of himself, not unlike Fredbear whom Izuku was holding. Wow, that's so cool. Can you move like that, Foxy? Izuku asked, peering at the now stuffed Foxy. Yar, I can, Foxy said before he seemed to scoot around at high speeds. It was as if someone had put him in a remote control car and was driving him around. Zuzu, look, Chica cried, pointing to something. Izuku looked down and saw Chica's cupcake looking back at him from the sand to his left. It now looked more demonic, but Izuku didn't feel any hostility coming from it. When it saw that Izuku was paying attention to it, the little cupcake sped off before leaping into the air and exploding. Wow, now you have offensive abilities, Chica. That's great. Chica held her hand in front of her face, as if to hide a blush. Thanks, Zuzu. With that, Izuku turned to Bonnie expectantly. Bonnie shrugged. I don't know, man. There ain't nothing that really feels different or whatever. Izuku frowned. Well, try some things. Strum your guitar, or try to breath fire or whatever. Izuku smirked a little, but Bonnie seemed unimpressed. Bonnie huffed a breath and strummed his guitar half-heartedly. Izuku and the rest of the gang were blown back as large sound waves vibrated out from the guitar. Bonnie looked down at his guitar with annoyed eyes. Well, I guess that's my power. It's whatever. Izuku was currently beaming, but Bonnie didn't seem to care. They spent the rest of the day testing out their newfound powers. Izuku had to wait to use one for all until he spoke with All Might, however. They walked to the pizzeria so that Izuku could say goodnight to Mei and make sure that she was taking care of herself. Izuku and Fredbear walked home alone. Izuku mumbled about applications for the animatronic's new powers and Fredbear listened closely to his ideas. Time skip a few days. Izuku had been too busy training his friend's new powers to really worry about whether or not he got in, but when Mom called to him that a letter was there from UA, Izuku made up for all that time spent not worrying by having a small panic attack. After calming down, he made his way to the pizzeria to open the letter with all of his friends. When he got there, he saw Chica and Freddy carrying Mei around above their heads as she belted an old pre-Quirk song. Izuku guessed it was called We Are the Champions, if the horrible singing was anything to go by. What are you up to, Mei? Izuku asked, smiling up at his CR best friend as she was paraded around the old dining area. I got the top score for the support course entrance exam, of course, Mei exclaimed, her face glowing with pride. She wriggled out of the robot's arms and glomped Izuku in a hug. So, what place did you get, Izuku? First or second? Izuku blushed heavily, but hugged her back. I don't know. I haven't looked at the letter yet. That's why I'm here. Mei pulled back from the hug and nodded, leading him over to where they have movie night. She brushed off an empty soda cup and a bag of half-eaten popcorn and sat the both of them down, handing Izuku a letter opener. Well, let's see it. Izuku slid the letter opener through the envelope and pulled out a small disc. Izuku noticed that the animatronics tensed for some reason before a voice rang out. I am here. As a projection. Izuku's head whipped back to the disc, and he saw All Might standing there in his signature pose. I'm sorry I couldn't be in contact with you recently, young Midoriya, but I was recording these. Why, you might ask? Because starting this year I will be teaching here at UA. Ha ha ha. What? Keep it short? How many of these do I have to do? All Might stage whispered to the crew filming the projection. And oh matter. We are here to talk about your score. You and your animatronics scored a whopping 67 villain points between the 5 of you. But that's not all. What kind of hero school would we be if we didn't award points to those doing the right thing? Look here, young Midoriya. All Might pointed behind him as a large screen took up the recording. On it, there was the nice girl from the exam. Sir? There was this really cool guy at the exam. He had these giant robots. Anyways, he and his robots saved me. Can I give him some of my points? He deserves something for helping me. Izuku noticed May twitch at the girl mentioning him. Present Mike smiled and pointed at her in an odd pose. Don't worry, little listener. He'll be just fine. The image switched to Chika helping the blonde kid from the exam, switching again to Freddy protecting the hero hopefuls from the falling debris, and finally Izuku taking out the zero-pointer to save the girl from the definitely overly large robot. All Might once again took up the projection for these actions, as well as the others that your animatronics took throughout the course of the exam. The judges have decided to award you 100 rescue points. Izuku felt faint as May shook him excitedly. This secured your place as the top scorer of the entrance exam of all time, beating my record of 157 points by 10. Good job, young Midoriya. I am so proud of you, and welcome to your hero academia. May and Chika were screaming and jumping around in celebration. Freddy and Foxy shared a high five. Bonnie just sat on the edge of the stage looking smug. Izuku finally realized that this was all real and broke down into tears, receiving a group hug as they all basked in the happiness of their achievement. Later that night, as they got ready for another movie night in celebration of passing their respective exams, May called Izuku into her workshop. There's something we need to talk about, Izuku. Izuku started sweating as he thought of everything that he could have done wrong this time. How do you know, All Might? Shit, it was worse than he thought. Bakugo sat at his desk, watching his acceptance video for the 5th time that day. His desk already a mess of scorch marks and burnt pieces of paper. Second place, he growled. How in the world did that motherfucking bitch-ass Deku beat me? Another explosion rang through the house as he slammed his hands on his desk, the whole thing finally giving way to his superior strength. He was going to END that nerd, and he was going to make it painful.